3 years ago, I started documenting women farmers. And in that time since, the images have been published around the world. The articles have been translated into 3 different languages, appearing in magazines from 425 to Billboard. I've exhibited in Chicago, New York, DC, London, and next week in Rome. I've even trended on Twitter. 3 years ago, I picked up a camera for the very first time. The most I'd ever written were emails and Facebook posts. I didn't even have a Twitter account. 3 years ago, I had no education, no background, no camera, no permission. So I had to give it to myself. Now, that's not to say that I haven't asked myself many times, who do I think I am? That I can be a photographer, a writer, the voice of women in agriculture? Now, as I was going through that list of accomplishments, who thought that maybe it sounded a little bit like bragging? It's okay, because I actually did too, and I almost cut it out of tonight's talk. And then a few weeks ago, I was traveling, and I shared an Uber with a hotel guest. And along the way, I learned that he was in town training with the Canadian track team. I asked him what events he competes in. He said the 100 and the 200. Whoa, I said, you must be fast. He said, I'm the fastest man in Canada. I high-fived him. But I learned something. You see, he wasn't bragging. He gave me an accurate portrayal of his achievements. So I left it in my talk tonight because it is an accurate portrayal of my achievements, but because it became about by my efforts to accurately portray a group of people that I felt had been invisible for far too long. The female farmer. You see, no one was telling their stories, not even them. This group of women who were doing amazing things and nobody knew about it. I thought somebody has got to do something about this. These women belong on the covers of magazines, on the front page of the newspapers, and now they are. I want you to know her, the female farmer. Johanna, she's a former nurse. She single-handedly brought the Icelandic goat breed back from the brink of extinction. Jen is the chief agricultural officer of the largest rooftop farm in the world. Vicky, she traded in her business suits for hay-covered sweaters, and she brought the micro dairy back to Whidbey Island. Sue and her farming partner, Annie, they have built such a solid business model that they're able to pay their farm crew a year-round salary. That builds stability in those families and in the community. Alice, she's taking abandoned nurseries and turning them into urban farms. And she's creating some really innovative water reclamation techniques. Ruth and Lori, former software engineers, they test drove their farm and their business model in the heart of Bellevue before moving to Eastern Washington. Lynn is an artist. She used to exhibit in galleries all around Seattle. Her medium's a little different these days. Food and Wine called her cheese one of the best in the country. Linda, she fought long and hard for her seat at the table for agricultural leadership. She said she used to be the only woman there, and that she often is still the only woman there, but now she's the one running the meetings. Janya, a hog farmer. She has to fight stereotypes even in her own community. At the feed store, they ask her, "How does your husband do it all? He must be so busy." For young farmers like Rand, owning farmland is a faraway dream. See, farming next to a metropolitan city like Seattle, it's very expensive. And as development grows, they're getting pushed further and further out. Michelle is the definition of fortitude. She works to ensure that preschool-age children in low-income neighborhoods have access to fresh vegetables and fruit. Siri, she passes the knowledge on. She's ensuring the next generation of farmers. Michelle farms over 10,000 acres in Montana. When a local farmer called her up and asked her if he could buy a bushel of corn, she said, "Sure, come on over. I'll load it up in your truck for you." He told her that he'd rather do business with her father. She said, "That's fine, but you still have to write the check out to me because I own the corn." Suzanne was a journalist setting the world on fire in Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. But she realized that if she wanted to change the world, she needed to do it from the ground up. Annie is an urban farmer because she believes that the best way to tell the complete story of how food is grown, that it must be done in the public gaze. Chu learned very quickly that people are willing to pay more for flowers than food. You can find her blossoms at Pike Place Market. Liz, a scientist who used to work in a lab in Boston, she says she may not be driving a Mercedes, but she's never eaten better. Now Karen, she is my personal hero. She had a vision that the empty lots in her neighborhood in the South Bronx would be filled with people growing food. She accomplished that, and now those people bring those vegetables to market, where their mission is, if you come to market hungry, you won't leave market hungry. You see, by giving voice to these stories, I've done something I didn't know that I could do. I could have very easily said, "I don't know how to take pictures. I don't know how to write. I can't do this." And maybe somebody else would have. And I'd have to stand in the sidelines and think, I had that idea. Or worse, the stories would have gone untold. What stories are going untold because you haven't given yourself permission? Have you written a book that no one has read? What about that dream job that you don't think you're qualified for? Do you have a business idea that you have not brought to market because you're afraid to publicly fail? I know that sometimes the hardest thing is the simple act of hitting the send or the submit button. But what impact could you make if you did? Who do I think I am? I'm Audra Mulkern, photographer, writer, storyteller. I challenge you to find and tell the untold story, especially if it's yours. Thank you.